Okay, go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the board, and welcome to today's Halton Police Board public meeting. To those members of the public that are joining us, welcome. We appreciate you tuning in to see how your civilian governors are managing the police service here in Halton Region. And also good morning and welcome to our fine staff, sworn and civilian, at the Halton Regional Police Service. Thank you for being here this morning to participate in the morning's meeting as well. Before we get started, I'm pleased to report to all of you that we have a new member among us, and I'd like to introduce to everybody Pavan Parmar, our latest board member. Thank you very much for joining the team, Pavan. We look forward to having you, and at all times, always feel free to ask questions and draw upon the collective knowledge of those members of the board who have maybe been doing it a little bit longer. So welcome. And also, before we get started, I just want to say a big thank you to Chairman Gary Carr for his service over the past year. We knew that he wasn't going to be able to hang out long because he has a lot of responsibility at Halton Region, but he was able to serve as that interim person for the period of time, did a great job, and we truly appreciate his participation, his contributions to the board. So with that, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, staff and friends, I'm calling this meeting to order. The first matter of business this morning is, Mr. Secretary, are there any regrets?
To join us today.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch you there, sir.
I apologize. I had an alert on my computer there. Ms.
Okay.
Seacon is not able to join us today.
Okay, so the rest of the team are here. That's great. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest or conflicts of interest to declare today? I don't see any. We have our set of public meeting minutes held on November 25th, 2021. Can I get a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you, Clark. Seconded by Don. Thank you very much. Everybody's on the ball this morning. Any comments, questions, errors, or omissions to report? Any objections to the approval of the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on. We do not have any scheduled presentations, delegations, and we have 5 matters on our consent agenda this morning. To members of the public, consent agenda items are generally, I would say, non-controversial, basic information items that do not require have specific actions to them, other than, for the most part, just receipt, or they are scheduled matters that come before us on a regular basis. So members of the board, anybody wish to separate anything from the consent agenda? Clark, you?
The facilities update, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we're separating 3.2. Anything else? Don?
3.3, secondary employment.
Ingrid?
Yes, the same as Dawn. 3.3,
Okay.
please.
Kurt? I'm sorry, I can't hear you, sir.
3.1 and 3.3.
Okay, so on that basis, then let's just go down the list because it's almost everything separated then. So we'll start with 3.1, Halton happenings. Kurt, that was you?
I just wanted to make a comment again on the commercial vehicle inspections, and I comment on these issues quite frequently, and this time though, I couldn't help but note that I think it was 72% of vehicles taken out of service, and it wasn't a huge number that was inspected from my perspective, but nonetheless, when 7 out of 10 vehicles are unfit to be on the road for whatever reason, I think that sounds alarm bells, and I just want to thank the service for its continued efforts in this area.
Okay, Chief Tanner, you had a comment, sir?
Yeah, it's that very same issue gets raised through the chair, Mr. Allen. It's our commercial vehicle people do amazing things. They know things about trucks that I know they have, how many wheels they have, and that's about it. But they can tell by looking at vehicles on the road that they have issues that are going to be found to be unsafe or likely to be unsafe. So it's kind of it's a targeted enforcement. So if they took 10 trucks at random and inspected them, it might be 1 or 2 or none. But when they're targeting them, and they can tell sometimes that they're already overloaded or suspensions broken or wheels are loose. When they target them, they usually get that 60 to 70% failure rate. So that's why the failure rate is so high. Having said that, there are a lot of unsafe vehicles on the road. So the work that they're doing is so vitally important.
Just a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Chair. I think we've talked about this as well, perhaps in the past, but do we think this is widespread across the province as it is in our area? And if so, should the Minister of Transport or somebody be taking a broader interest in this?
Yeah, it's that's an interesting question. And I would think that it is probably the same across the country. It depends. Sometimes, I'll give you an example. We have dealt with large trucking companies and in the gravel industry, and they tend to overload because overloading is more money. I mean, we've had trucks. I think there was one, Roger Jeff, that was like 15,000 kilograms overweight. So time is money, and they do that, and then they complain when their trucks get taken off the road or their drivers get licenses. But some of the companies actually allow that or prefer that it happens because it's every trip is money, and their brakes aren't made for that weight and all the rest of the things. So I would say that it's probably across Canada in general that there are good truck owners, bad truck owners, good companies, not so good companies. So I would think it's widespread.
Thank you, Kurt. Clark, did you have your hand up on this one?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it was on this issue, so I was glad to see that my colleague Kurt held this one to say this. So I know, Chief, I don't know if you're aware that in both the Halton budget, you probably are in the Halton Hills budget, we have the money set aside this year for the inspection stations, both in Halton Hills on Steeles Avenue, which is tremendously needed. That one there along in front of the Kraft warehouse. And there's also one in Halton Hills on Highway 7, just out by 6th Line. But the commercial vehicle unit, when they're out there, exactly like you said, where they're targeting, it's absolutely incredible when you see the stats and see the social media posts of some of the vehicles that are rolling down the road with, heavy equipment not strapped, as an example, or no brakes, no lights, and just, the unsafe situations that they cause. But I guess the more direct question I would ask is, with us having one commercial vehicle unit, do we really need to have another one and be able to target it more proactively? Because I know that there's a lot of work that goes into it, the expertise that they have. Is it something that we need to ramp it up and get a second unit so we can have it almost ongoing?
Well, I would say it parallels a lot of other units. The drug unit, we could probably double or triple the drug unit and they would all be busy. We could double or triple commercial vehicle and they would be busy and they would find more trucks. And then we balance that with trying to get enough officers on the frontline platoons, which was in the budget that yourself and other regional councilors just passed yesterday. So every single officer is a balancing point on where they're assigned. We do have Clark. I'll have to check the status of it right now, but there's portable scales for some of the testing that they do on these trucks. And at one point, I believe Milton and Halton Hills at one point a few years ago purchased a separate set of scales so that other officers could conduct some of those sorts of inspections. And I'm not sure if there's an update on that, Raj, but so there is ways of doing it. It's just the highest level of expertise. It's hard for us to find more resources to go there right now.
I guess as the other comment, so some of the board members, just as a final comment, may not be aware, is that they can't just pull them over at the side of any of the road when they do it to do the inspections. They always need a location to have it where it's safe for the officers to do it. And I know, Mohawk gets used, and some of the other ones, they use arena sites if there's easy for the trucks to get in and out of. So that's the other problem as well, Mr. Chair, is finding a place where they can safely inspect the units so that the the officers are safe as well. Hornby Road has been used because of the way that it, it aligns, but it is one, it's very popular with the public when they see them being pulled over. And I find whenever there has been a blitz, I explain exactly, well, they're not pulling over every truck. They target which ones they feel might have an issue with it. But thank you for your answer, Chief.
And if or when the CN complex goes in the Milton area, trucking is going to be massive. I know it's a concern for Milton and Halton Hills particularly, but there's going to be so many more trucks even than that we have right now. So it's something that at that point we probably will have to increase that unit.
Probably have to build a permanent kiosk by the CN intermodal site.
Yeah.
Roger, Deputy Roger wants to have a comment here.
Thank you, and through the chair, just an additional comment about how we deploy for commercial motor vehicle enforcement. In that we do have a full-time unit, as been referenced, but we have members who are trained as well that work in our district response team. So we engage those members on these blitzes and then specific municipal-based enforcement initiatives. So we do have more than just that smaller subset. They coordinate all the work, and then we bring in people as required. So we do have a bit more bandwidth than it shows on paper. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Pav Parmar is next. Go ahead, Pav.
Thank you, Chair. Just switching gears here, I have a couple of general questions about the report. My first one is around the community mobilization officers, the school liaison officers. And I was just wondering if the presentations that are made in the schools are in person or if they're virtual. I was also wondering what level they take place at. Are they elementary or high school only? And then my last question is, there's a range of topics. I wonder if any of those are available online as well for viewing.
Is that for you, Chief, or who's going to take that on?
You want to take that, Raj?
Sure. Thank you for the question. So with the pandemic, we have flipped to virtual presentations. We do have 17 school liaison officers that serve both the Catholic and the public board. We serve both elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools. The reality is that they do some amazing work with the deliverables on those educational curriculum that we have built with all of the respective school boards. And so we continue to look for ways to engage in person, but the programming piece in terms of education is virtual at this time.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is that available after use? Like say a student wanted to review it with their parents or whatnot, would they have access to the presentation that was made?
So all of those programs can be recorded by the school. And I know that they do that because not every kid is present in school all the time. So it is accessible, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then my second question is around the diversity engagement table. It says that the event was held virtually and included members from our diverse communities. So I was just wondering, is this event open to the public, or is it like how are stakeholders chosen for this event, and are invitations sent out to it?
Yeah, some are through the chairs. Some having our longtime members, the Andrew Terrells of the world, back to Andrew's mother, Veronica. So we have some longtime members, and then we have some other Caribbean associations, for example, which really came together more within the last year, and there was interaction between us and them, at which point they were invited. So it is a bit of a growing group, and it's diversity in religion as well. So we have representatives from the different religious churches all through the region, but it is open, and because this is your first meeting, any one of those meetings, any one of the board members could certainly attend. I know Ingrid has been to some in person, and Jeff, and so it is an amazing thing to see these people talk about engagement and talk about how positive their relationship is with the Halton Regional Police Service. But it is also important to reach out to other groups that might not be as engaged and bring them in so that they learn about us and we learn about them. And then when the real beauty of it is when something does happen, and it could be somewhere else in the world, that heightens the state of anxiety at local mosque or at the synagogue, then we have a higher presence there in a proactive way, and it just all comes together. So I'd certainly encourage you, we'll let you know when the next one is, but encourage all the board members to attend those.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kurt, you were next.
No, I think Mr. Chair, I'll let it go. I think it's been adequately covered. I was going to make another comment about the commercial vehicles, but I'll let that slide this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I do actually have a question on the commercial vehicles, and I'm curious, do we know what the range of fines are and penalties for commercial vehicle infractions?
I do not. Some of them get to be quite expensive on the overload side and different things. I don't know if you have those details, Raj.
Through the chair, they are significant because you can charge not only the operator but the owner, and those owner fees can be hundreds of thousands of dollars based on safety pieces. So when you lay like Part 3 offenses that have that significant fine, it is a significant dent in their profits, and so that's where we get the compliance pieces through enforcement, because they can't afford the fines.
Yeah, I was just speculating the high number of commercial vehicle infractions. I wonder if it was somehow connected with fines, which are being treated as a cost of doing business as opposed to a fine that is actually a penalty to the organization. But if you're saying it's hundreds of thousands of dollars and potentially charges against the individual, I'd say that's pretty stiff. So it's still mind-boggling as to why these organizations would try to get away with this when they know the cost is so high.
Well, it's like drinking and driving.
I think to be candid, I think with volume of trucks, they just kind of build that into your business. If you can run 100 trucks down a road and only one gets stopped, they'll eat that cost because they're making so much money.
So it's still at that level that it's cost of they can basically just consider it a cost of doing business, unfortunately. Okay, thank you. Moving on to 3.2, that was separated by our friend from Acton.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that. I guess well, you can probably guess which one I'm going to ask about, which is the new one district, the new one district station. And it is good to see the progress report up here. And Chief, as always, let me know if there's anything you need from myself on my end of the world to help keep this moving forward. But I'm just wondering, Chief, about having a conversation as to what uses or the will be for the present District 1 station in Georgetown because of its location. So I'm just wondering if we can sometime plan, sit down, hopefully have a coffee and be in the same room together and have that conversation of just about some ideas that have come up in the community about what potentially that site could be used for. I know it's premature now, but just, sometimes you just got to make a mark on these things so you can have a conversation about it later on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Mr. Somerville, and through the chair. It's we've given a lot of thought to all of the facilities, including the one in Milton. At the end of the day, it's kind of a balancing act in my view, because they're actually regional buildings. Somehow the police rightfully fund them through our budgets. Just an aside, in Kingston, the capital budget was completely separate from the operating budget and had nothing to do with how many police officers we could hire, because we had capital expenses on a facility side. But I've always said to Halton Hills Council, especially, that with the growth that's going to come in Milton and in Halton Hills over the next 15, 20 years, this is sort of a transitional time where we're bringing all the officers and the members, civilians that work in those two stations right now into one. It's in the south end of Halton Hills. It's really closer to Milton in some ways. So it serves our purposes for a while until we outgrow that. And with the cost of land and everything else, we'd probably be wise for two different reasons. In the case of the Georgetown station, to keep it and utilize it as a touch point, community sort of access facility still. We've thrown around ideas of being able to section off the whole back of that building. I mean, it's a terrible building, but it could be used for storage. It could be rented for some some purpose, but then the land would still be there. And 15 years from now or 20 years from now, the chief and the board aren't going to be looking for land in Halton Hills where they can build a different station. So we've got to look at it in all those different levels. We will find a use for it in the interim. And there may be community uses for part of it. It is a community building. It's a regional building. So we're open to considering all sorts of different things. Milton's a little bit different because that campus sort of area in Milton is highly sought after, I guess. There's reasons to expand different other organizations that are on that property right now, and that property would be worth a small fortune in and of itself. But if it were to be sold, that doesn't come back to the police budget either. So it's a regional property, and that's why, just a small point, when we're going ahead with the new facility in the south end of Halton Hills, the actual acquisition of the land itself is being funded separate from the police budget. The region is looking after the land part. They're going to have other uses for it as well, which is great because it allows us more closely to be able to construct the facility within the budget that we have right now, or a little bit more. We'll see. But the longer it goes out, the more expensive buildings get every year. So we're trying to push it along as quick as we can. Hopefully we'll be in 2025. I'd rather it be 2023. But some people are more realistic than I am. So we're looking at all the options, and it's good to it's a good problem to have.
And it's through you, Mr. Chair, is that, it's interesting because it's probably one of the oldest buildings that we have in the facilities, if it's not the oldest, because of it is an old building. It is a tired old building, but and like I said, Chief, I look forward, we can sit down and I can just tell you what I've been hearing from the community and how that can work in with the police's plans for down the road as well.
For sure, I would love to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Anything further on 3.2? I have a very quick comment. I just want to thank the facilities folks for finally getting the sign fixed on 2 District. It was hard to see it off Dundas. It had faded. I guess there was some sort of issue with the design of the sign. It had faded to almost being opaque, and now it's looks great. People can see that 2 District is proudly flying its colors there. So thanks for getting that organized, and particularly in the chairman's ward. So moving on to 3.3, 3.3, I think that was separated by Dawn.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, perhaps to the chief, I shouldn't be surprised. We only have 14 officers looking for secondary employment. Quite ambitious, taken to the fact of how demanding their primary job truly is. But how long has this been in effect, and is it monitored? And if there is an injury taken on that secondary job, how is that treated regarding their duties for their primary job?
Well, thank you. And through the chair, good questions. There are far more people with secondary employment approved than what is on this list. This is a periodic update that we send to the board. So there will be there's a major list where everyone who's approved for secondary employment is on there. Going to if they're injured in the other job, it depends on the terms of their employment there. It may be a WSIB issue with the other employer. I'm thinking the young civilian member who's seeking to be a flight attendant. Obviously, they would only be working there on their 4 days off or whatever it is. But if they were injured there, it would probably be an Air Canada issue, but it would trickle down to us if they weren't able to come to work. Of course, that could happen in a gym or jogging or a number of different things as well. This whole world, though, on secondary employment really changed probably 10 or 15 years ago at least. It used to be that no police officer could have secondary employment unless they had the approval of the chief of police. And there were certain parameters around that which they could not work at. For example, the United Auto Workers years ago, back in the 80s and the 90s, police officers would have been forbidden to work at Ford Motor Company in Oakville on the side because they would have had to become members of the UAW. And that's just the way the world was seen back then. But it really changed to where instead of being mandatory for in every situation to have this approval given, it's more so now that if the member thinks it could be a conflict, they should ask for permission. So depending on an individual's interpretation of what a conflict is, I could get a part-time job at film.ca and say, I don't think this is any conflict. I'm not doing police related duties and I'm only going to work Tuesday night when I'm off. I would not technically have to ask the chief of police for permission for that. So that's a big change from what it was when I started policing in the 80s, where like I would have been afraid to work somewhere unless I had permission. But now it's much more, there's much more leeway in what people can do or what they can interpret as secondary employment. And unless it really came to our attention and it was a position that was, you know, an obvious issue when it came to policing, maybe working in a certain type of a licensed establishment or something, or with ties to organized crime, running a business. It's really, there's much more leeway for the officers. Now, a lot of these people on this list are civilians. It's not necessarily police officers.
Oh,
And what we find in some of those instances with the cost of living here in Halton and them considering everything else, that they are supplementing their income, although they're well paid here. It's an expensive world. So it's, a lot of people are saying I'm off for 4 days. You know, let's say firefighters build a lot of fences and decks, but police officers can build those things too, right? So that's sort of the lay of the land in 2021.
great. Thank you, Chief.
Thanks, Don. So you heard it here first. You can buy your popcorn from Chief Tanner at film.ca on Tuesday nights.
Tuesday night.
And he'll make sure you get double butter. I do have a question on the same topic, just a very quick aside. I noticed one of the jobs on that list was security guard, and I'm curious I don't know whether that's a civilian or a sworn member of the service. How would that, is that not potentially a conflict because they're both licensed, like one's a licensed position, and I mean there's obviously implications with a sworn member of the police service, you know, acting in that capacity. So I'm just curious how that would work. I saw Deputy Hills. So go ahead, Chief.
No, go ahead, Jeff.
So it is actually governed under the Police Services Act. There's 4 sections that when you're considering applying for secondary employment. So in your scenario of a police officer doing security work, there is a specific section of the Police Services Act that lays out 4 scenarios where that would actually be prohibited. So the one is that would put them in a conflict of interest, but specifically that it would give them an advantage derived from their employment as a police service. So if they were trying to do both. So there is specific that the members have to go to. We have a policy specifically on this. So when the chief talks about how they have to consider whether they may be under a conflict of interest, it does lay out what the conflicts are. So in that scenario, a person in my mind would clearly say, okay, this is going to be a conflict for me. And it wouldn't get approved by the chief.
So is that to suggest that whoever that person is a civilian member, so wouldn't necessarily be in the case? Because I do notice that security guard is listed on that list.
I will check, but my recollection is it's a civilian member and it's, you know, sitting at a construction site at night or something.
Okay, that's fine.
But I will give you one example, and it's we had a highly trained collision reconstructionist, which is quite an art in and of itself. A few years ago approached us and wanted to do consulting work in collision reconstruction on the side, which would have been for defense lawyers, for civil actions. And as a serving member of the Halton Regional Police Service, I saw that as a conflict. The member absolutely agreed and did not pursue it. It would be something that he or she does after they retire, but not while they're here.
Great, thank you. Anything further on 3.3? Kurt?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I
Sorry,
just wanted.
Kurt, I had raised my hand prior.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Ingrid.
So some of my concerns on 3.3 have been addressed through my colleague Dawn. And I was under the impression that these requests were all from uniformed officers. So hence the question I was going to raise was, how does this affect their role when we hear of how critical the roles are and that we have shortages in certain areas? And the question I have is, it says the approval is for 3 years, and this covers 2021. So are we looking at going into 2022 with these 14 requests?
Yes.
And is that then the conclusion of the 3-year term?
These ones would have, I think these ones were just approved this year, so they would, yeah, they would go 21, 22, 23. I mean, technically, someone may have been approved January 15th and somebody August 15th. It would go 3 years from the approval date, technically.
So I think to the points that were raised earlier, it would be quite beneficial, certainly for me, to know which of these jobs is being looked for by a civilian versus a uniformed officer, because I do think it has a bigger impact as we read this report.
My belief sitting here today is the majority of these are civilians, but I can't say that they're all civilians. But we could include that perhaps on the report, not to identify the person, but to say whether they're civilian or uniform. But when you think about some civilians and a lot of our uniformed people work 4 days on, 4 days off. If they're on their second or third day off and it's not a conflict professionally, there's really not many ways that I could say no, unless there is a clear conflict. And then the complicating part is technically, if they review the Police Services Act and in their mind it's not a conflict, they don't have to ask. So we're really capturing the people who come forward and ask for all the legitimate reasons. But there will be others who do something on the side that we would never know about.
So what you're saying is we're not aware of every situation where there is secondary employment.
Yeah.
So these people come forth with good faith, seeking the approval so that they can carry out their secondary interests.
Right.
All right. Okay. That's fine. Thank you very much, Chief.
You're welcome.
Going forward, I would just ask that to avoid what just happened, if people can start using their raised hand feature on the app, it'd be useful. A big issue for me when I'm watching the screen is that I have a wide screen and there's a lot of people on the screen. I don't always see when people put their hand up. So if you can start using the raised hand feature, I would really appreciate it. And that way people don't feel that they're being left behind or ignored. I apologize for that. Kurt, you're up next, sir.
Much of what I wanted to say, I think, was just covered. I think it does make a difference whether it's a uniform peace officer versus a civilian non-peace officer. The two that caught my attention were, one has already been discussed, the security guard, but the other was a paramedic. And again, depending on whether it's uniform, non-uniform, although that might not make all the difference in this case, it looks to me like that, or suggests to me that that could be a situation where a paramedic could be engaging frequently with uniform presence at events or problems and things like that. The likelihood of claims of negligence and whatever. And I just wanted to comment on that to hear whether those kinds of issues would be thought to be problematic for the service if it were a uniform person, for example.
Yeah, I do not recall in that case if it's uniform. I don't know if the deputies know offhand. If it ever came to our attention that there were issues at the scene, and I'm not certain that it's a paramedic in Halton. It may be Peel or Hamilton or something as well. But if there were some sort of a conflict between the member as now a paramedic and the police officers, that would be an issue that may come to our attention. And that could be a discipline up to and including a disciplinary type of situation, because that applies to off duty as well. So we would monitor that sort of thing. I think it is a very part-time situation that this person had been a paramedic, wanted to keep their, training up and stay involved. They may even be doing vaccines. I'm not sure. But I could check for the details. But certainly if there was a conflict at a scene, I would hope that would come to our attention.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chief, if I may, Mr. Chair. Whether in Halton or Peel or in any, it's still the same situation, same province, same employer, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, Don, you're next.
One last one. It has some relevance, but how are officers selected for special duty, Chief?
Well, they would put their names forward that they're interested, and we're talking about paid duties.
Correct.
I would assume. So there's a bit of a rotation so that the same person doesn't get all of them. It causes some issues. It's a service to the public. I would prefer to never have them, because people could work a lot of extra hours and then be tired, when they're coming to have their actual job. It's not as prevalent here as I would say in Toronto. Over the years, there are people who make $100,000 doing paid duties in Toronto, working at every construction site, going to every Blue Jay, Argo, Leaf, all the good sports teams. But that was for Jeff. But we monitor them. It used to be, there were a lot of issues, again, back in the 80s and 90s. It was a paper process. People would go and do paid duties. They would be paid cash. There was no record of that. There were issues in whether taxes were paid or not, and how those sorts of paid duties were audited. So all of it now funnels directly through the service. When they're paid for their paid duties, it's through finance, through payroll here. So the proper taxes are taken off, and they're at time and a half. I've lost track. It's $75 or $80 an hour when they do these special duties. So it is extra income, as long as people don't become too reliant on it. But they are, I would say, I think I did 3 in my lifetime, and they are extremely boring sometimes. So sometimes we have a hard time filling them. And people will pick and choose, and they will want to do a 10 or 12 hour one maybe, but they don't want to do a 3-hour one and come all the way into work, get ready. So it is a problem to fill them sometimes.
Wow. Thank you.
Thanks. Don, can I just ask you to mute your mic when you're not on, please and thank you. Anything further on 3.3? I can't recall. Did anybody separate 3.4? I don't see anybody on 3.4. 3.5, communications update. Anybody on that? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda items 3.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, please? That's moved by Kurt, seconded by Pavan. Last chance for comments or questions. Seeing none, is there any objection to approval of those items? There is no objection, so 3.1 through 3.5 are approved. We move on to our discussion items. We start with 4.1, which is the proposed process for annual evaluation of Chief Governance Officer. And I'm going to ask, as per my memo to the board, that this matter be deferred till May. I have one more, sorry, May. I don't know why I said May. Be deferred till January. I have one more to collect, and I want to have an opportunity to have a conversation with the CGO until such a point as I want to have a chance to have a chat with him before I present it to the board. So I've got everything tabulated except for the one, and I'd like to present it in January. And the actual incumbent has a comment. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. This particular item is about the process and a policy amendment, not about the results of that evaluation.
Yes, that's right.
Camera.
Yes, correct. You are right. I apologize for that. I jumped the gun.
Yeah, so this may also assist you, just process framework formalized may assist in actually
Yeah.
completing the evaluation.
Thank you. So I apologize for that. I jumped the gun. The CGO is correct. I will ask for that deferral when we get to the appropriate point. So we have 4.1. Mr. CGO, do you want to present your report, please?
Certainly. So following in the chair's lead on evaluations, when the board adopted the evaluation form and process regarding the chair's annual evaluation, I've created this proposed form and process, and with the assistance of the chair. And it basically has two components. It has the annual objectives, which are listed there on the form as A, B, and C. And obviously they would be different each year. And then the components that are the job description according to governance policy 10, governance support. And it's laid out very much the same, a similar framework to the evaluation of the chair, though obviously the criteria are different. And that's the introduction. If there's any questions or comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Fred. And I'll just confirm. So I did have an opportunity to review this with Fred prior to presentation, and I do endorse what is contained in the report. We have questions and thank you for using your hands. We have questions starting with Clark and then go to Kurt.
I always raise my hand. It's just
I know
the way
you do.
My mom raised me.
You get gold stars, Mr.
Well, thank you.
Mr.
I need
Somerville.
gold stars. I can put them on my sweater across the top.
Yeah.
The only thing I would suggest on any of these forms we're asked when we're doing reviews, can we please make sure they're fillable on a tablet? Because on most of these, you have to download them to a computer, fill them out, change it, send it back. It's a pain. So if we can have it where they're fillable, it's a lot easier for me personally than doing that, because I know I was late on a couple of these that were asked, because when I get them, if I can do them on my tablet, I'll do it right away. And I tend to be one of those people, if I don't do it right away, I sometimes forget about things until I start getting emails from people saying, hey, you haven't done this yet. So if they could be fillable, that would be wonderful.
I'm sure that technology is possible. The masters in the policy manual, of course, are in PDF, but there's Word versions, and in terms of tablet friendly, I'm sure between Graham and Kimberly, they can help me create those for you.
Yeah,
I don't have the that skill, but one of the team members will, I'm sure.
Yeah, you can easily create PDF form filler forms. I'm sure that Graham or Kimberly could manage that. Good point, Clark. Anything further, sir? Okay, next up is Kurt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like what I see here and I'm prepared to move it.
Oh, thanks for the efficiency. So the matter's been moved. Is there a seconder? Ingrid, thank you. Further comments? Any objections to the approval of this particular initiative? I'm seeing none. 4.1 is approved. Thank you. Moving on to 4.2, contract extension for ST Solutions Limited. Are there any questions or comments on this? Does anybody wish further information, or is the report self-sufficient? Not seeing any requests for more information. Clark, are you moving that, sir? Thank you. Is there a seconder? I'm sorry, Kurt, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm prepared to move this and the following.
Okay, so I'll have you move the second, and so you will second the ST Solutions Limited because Clark moved it, and I'll have you move the teleservices one. So let's deal with the vote on ST Solutions first. Is there any further comments or questions on this particular item? Seeing none, is any objection to the approval of the initiative? Seeing none, that's approved. 4.3 is moved by Kurt. Is there a seconder for that? Nobody wants to second. Okay, thank you, Clark. We're just reversing the previous motion. Any comments or questions? Any objection to the approval of this request? Seeing none, that is approved. 4.4 annual CAPG conference. This is the one I believe it's being held this year in Saskatoon. Yep, that's the one. Ingrid, you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I would like to attend that conference, please.
Sure. I was going to ask actually that what I was about to say was everybody that's interested in attending, they can put their name forward. We're not going to limit the number of people who can go. So just so you
Wonderful.
know, because it's one of these events where there's great value, I think, in learning and having the opportunity to participate. So Ingrid, did you have anything further than wanting to add your name? Okay.
Say what a privilege it would be to be able to meet with colleagues in our police governance roles across the country in Saskatoon in person.
Yes. Anybody that attended the CAPG event, I believe it was last month, there's a little video encouraging us to attend with all of the various benefits of going to Saskatoon. It was quite interesting, and the mayor spoke to it as well. So it was nice invitation and beckoning to Saskatchewan. Anybody further? Kurt, you had your hand up. Did you? Are you adding your name, or did you have a question?
Well, I will, now that I know the process, I will add my name. I just wanted to say that as I'm on the board, I think there's an expectation that I will be there in all likelihood.
Do you need a specific endorsement from us to attend, or is being on the board sufficient?
I will put my name forward and along with any others. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've so far got Ingrid and Kurt. Clark?
Well, it's as much as I would love to be able to attend from having been at CAPG before. I think that I may be a little busy at that time with it falling in September with other things that are going on. So I'd be glad to move the report once everybody's had the opportunity to put it, but maybe I'd be able to join virtually, but we can figure that out down the road, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I really would like to go, but I'm just concerned about, the Kurt and Pav and I, not Kurt, Clark, Pav and I all have a particular responsibility at that time. So I'm just not sure how it fits in my calendar either. I would like to go, but I don't want to put my name on it and then end up having to pull out and cost the board money. Chief Tanner, you had a question?
Well, I will go and represent those of you that are embroiled in elections at that point in time, but hopefully we can travel by then.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. Do we have to put the chief forward as a delegate if he wishes to attend, or does that come under his own discretion? Fred?
I would say that's be his own discretion, but it's great to have it as part of the on the record. And I'd like to add my own name to that as well.
Okay, so
and then it's easier for staff to make any arrangements that might be required, especially since things are different right now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So the biggest thing is we want to know how many rooms to book as soon as the block gets opened in January.
Well, let me ask.
It's not fun to be in a different hotel across the city.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask a question for those of us who are at political campaign or in political campaign mode at that point. Can we put our name on the list and withdraw without financial penalty up to a certain point once we determine what the extent of our election commitments are, or once we're on and we're paying the bill no matter what?
I will take a stab at that. So there are cancellation fees with the registration.
Okay.
There will be with flights potentially, and there will be with hotels. The dates and the timelines for all three components are different. So typically the hotel is the one that's the limiting factor, and also the easiest to cancel without penalty closer to the date. So the first thing that typically is done is the rooms are booked. And then as you get closer and able to make a decision, you can book your flight. Obviously, the more in advance, more flexible, and the better the price. But you're going to have to, I don't know what those penalties would be. It'd be dependent on booking and typically everyone makes their own bookings for that, for flights. In terms of the actual conference, if you're not sure, well, we'd have to, I don't think the cancellation policy's out on that, is it, Graham?
No, again, there's very little information available other than the dates and the location and the hotel at this point. I would just offer, in terms of those hotel bookings, it's been my experience, because my office over on the regional side handles the arrangements for the annual FCM and AMO conferences. It's not a big deal if you have a hotel room booked to just change the name. You know, if somebody is not able to go, obviously with flights and others, it's a little different, but I don't think there would be too much of an issue if we booked, you know, a block of hotel rooms and then, you know, one person had to withdraw. I'm sure we could, you know, we could maybe send someone else or find another taker for it.
Okay, thank you. Well, on that basis, I'm prepared to put my name forward as long as it's not going to end up costing the board if I have to withdraw. So put my name forward for the time being, and then we can revisit it once we get further down the road. But Fred, can you maybe ascertain what the point at which there's a penalty involved so that we know what the drop dead date would be in terms of the participation at the conference, et cetera? I mean, I don't imagine there'd be a
Certainly.
big issue around the flights, but certainly around the conference fees and such. Coming back to you, Clark. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask the same thing, Mr. Chair, and this is a big hotel, and I know from the size of the conference that this hotel, like they do everything right on site, and like it is an absolutely beautiful old railroad hotel. It's in that style. That it's a Delta, not a Fairmont one, from having stayed in it many times over my FCM career. But I agree with Mr. Chair. I'll put my name forward for now, and if we find out you know, that we can't, we can always withdraw before the date that
Okay.
once we know it.
Thank you. I mean, one of the things that I've not had a lot of opportunity to go to conferences. In fact, I haven't gone to one since I've joined the board. It's been a long time. They've never worked, but I think as chair and hopefully chair again next term, all of your participation and willingness required for that. But if I'd certainly like to be able to represent the service or the board at that particular conference, if it's at all possible. So I would like to do the same. Anybody further wishes to add their name? I'm not seeing any. So can we just review who we have on the list then? We have Kurt, Ingrid, Fred, the chief, myself, and Clark as tentative. And I think is it, correct? Did I miss anybody? Okay, that's a thumbs up from Graham. Thank you very much. Can I get a mover and seconder for that then, please? Ingrid and Clark, thank you very much. Any objections to the proposal as amended? Not seeing any, that is approved. Thank you very much. And I truly hope that not only can I go, but that we can all go and once again return to in-person conferences, because it's I don't know about all of you, but I'm really tired of Zoom-based conventions and conferences. The quality of what you can get out of them is just so much less than what you can actually get in person, and the networking and everything else. So let's hope for better days. Notwithstanding the news today that we're at 2,400, I believe, cases according to the news brief I just got. Okay, let's move on then. And we have now we're up to operational verbal updates. Chief, what's your pleasure here?
I believe the deputies may both have one or more, but I'm going to turn it over to Bill Payne first, our IT director. Just a really quick introduction, but during the Grey Cup, the Hamilton Police encountered some issues with their drone operations and being able to stream the video from those drones back to the command post. And Bill was able to manipulate some things within our LTE PSBN network. So we actually operated it. But I'm going to let Bill give the fascinating details.
Thank you, Chief, and through the chair. It's a testament to teamwork here, that's for sure, within our IT department. Adam Woods was also critical in making this happen, as well as a couple of other team members who work for him. So we got a call with concerns over cellular coverage during the event. And we were able to remotely modify our network a little bit to be able to reach the stadium with our own private public safety broadband network. For those of you who may not be aware, we operate our own LTE 4G network, which we host for ourselves, as well as Peel Region and others who are joining. We watched in surprise as a lot of the commercial networks sort of ground down to pretty much zero data throughput throughout the event, and kept an eye on that. Our wireless network was performing perfectly, and as a result, the Hamilton Police were able to resume and maintain drone operations for surveillance to keep 28,000 people plus all the other first responders there safe, monitored, and in touch. I think one of the telling moments was probably around halftime when the lights were shut off and everyone used their cell phone, as a light. In the old days, it would be a lighter at a concert. People use their phones now. And it looked like a starry night throughout there. And every single one of those points of light was a phone that was really congesting the commercial networks. And so I think it's a real testament to our teamwork, the support of the board in doing this, and in the support of the chief and the deputies, of course, in making this decision a few years ago to support this and go ahead. It's this asset has been incredible for us. We are saving lives with it. 98% of our patrol vehicle data is over this network, which is highly available, highly reliable, secure asset. So they're very appreciative, and now looking to other events coming where they can utilize this technology to enable their frontline police operations for major events and day-to-day use, which is what we are using it for as well. Thank you.
That's incredible. Any questions on that? I have one. I'm not seeing any. What is that? I'm sorry, I apologize if I get into the weeds a little bit. I'm curious, how does that work technologically? Do you have to deploy a repeater or is it using the existing infrastructure that's there?
So we used existing infrastructure, and we're able to actually remote control our antennas. We can actually point our antennas to focus a bit more signal strength in certain areas, that sort of thing. We can do that dynamically. And we're on dedicated spectrum that's been reserved for public safety, which we're advocating for the control and use of. And through the advocacy in our not-for-profit association that we've formed, we've got 60, 70 agencies all on board, government and private as well, like commercial entities. And we're able to set up fixed wireless access point on top of one of the buildings there. And through some, borrowing of assets, things like that, we were able to put an antenna up and run this dedicated network over there in the stadium for the drone use in this case.
That's simply amazing. Thank you for that report, and congratulations to you and to Adam. Thank you for your work, and to your team. That's great. I'm so glad that we were in Halton Region able to save Hamilton once again.
Thank you, Chair.
Who's next, Chief?
Deputies?
I've only got in camera. So.
Okay. Deputy Roger?
Mine is in camera as well.
Fair enough. Okay. Members of the board, I will direct your attention to the action registry. You'll find your items there. There are 2 items. I don't believe either one of them are due right now, so I just look for motion to receive the action agenda items. Thank you, Clark. Seconded by Kurt. Thank you very much. Any objections to receipt? Seeing none, we'll move on. You have been circulated the public correspondence on Bill of Trust. Can I get a motion to receive the correspondence, please? Clark and Ingrid, thank you. Any questions, comments? Objections to receipt? Seeing none, we move on to new business. Is there any new business to come before the board today? Clerk.
Sorry, I didn't use my hand that time. I was kind of, I wasn't fast enough, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to thank the chief and the service and the all members of the Intimate Partner Violence Group who were out for the dedication of Barb's Bench up in Halton Hills last week on a cold, wet, wintry day. That it was so very well received. It was such a beautiful service and event, and also having the couple who's had lost a grandchild to domestic partner violence was such a powerful and moving statement. So, you know, hats off to the chief being there, the service being very well represented, as well as Halton's Women's Place. And it was, I've had just so many people commenting on it, on how nice it is to see the bench there. Sadly, it's from terrible circumstances, and people asking how they can find out about other locations for them. So thank you so much, Chief, for being there, for the deputies and all the staff as well.
Thank you, Clark.
Thank you very much. And it was an amazing ceremony there to be with the grandparents who are so supportive of the police, and Peel Police were there with us as well, because it was sort of a cross-jurisdictional tragedy. But it's a beautiful tribute in the most horrific of situations. So it was certainly our pleasure to be there, and it highlighted, as Halton Women's Place highlighted a number of times during the ceremony and the speeches, the strength of the positive partnership between the Halton Police and Halton Women's Place, which is not the case in all police jurisdictions. So that was an added bonus of having that relationship highlighted.
Chief, can you just mention the stat you used that day of how many calls the service gets? It was, I had more people comment on that they couldn't believe the number you get. I think
one of the numbers that we were using that day was around 10 per day, Jeff.
Yes, there's 10 per day. We're actually right now, year to date, we're at 3,300 occurrences of IPV violence this year alone, unfortunately. Just to add to your comment, Chair Clark, we're actually, Anita doesn't have her camera on, but we are actually looking at more benches. And Paul and Flo, who you're speaking about, are actually coming for a visit today. And you know, just to add to that, they are absolutely incredible people, just using their horrible tragedy to speak out. And if you ever have the opportunity, like you did then, Mr. Somerville, like, they're just amazing people. So they are coming by today, great people, and we hope to keep their story going, just so that we can continue to raise awareness. And to your point about the bench, we were just talking about it yesterday with them, about how impactful and what an amazing day it was for them as well. So that the memory of their daughter isn't lost. So it was a great day for us as well. And I think Anita just turned her camera on. I think it's a plug to get in now, thanks to Mr. Somerville. And I think we're looking at other benches, aren't we, Anita?
Yeah, we are. We already have plans for next year. And we had a family approach us and request that it's in honor of a family friend.
I did refer someone down who had asked about one to, I suggested they contact either the service or Halton's Women's Place. And then I told them if they need anything on my end to help make it happen in a park or anything, just to let me know. So, you know, if you ever find you need that up in my area, Anita or any of the staff, just let me know, because I'll help you any way I can.
Fantastic. That's where it's we were actually going to speak to you about it.
Perfect timing. Next up is Ingrid.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. If it is appropriate to ask this question during our public agenda, I would like to pose it of Deputy Hill in terms of the outcome of the symposium, the Women's Symposium on November the 30th and December 1.
We are, if it's okay through the chair, we're actually going to be speaking about it in camera. I've asked Anita to actually give a bit of an update after, and as to what next steps are, if that's okay with you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ingrid. Don?
Yes, I think it's appropriate to give a little more background for the public's benefit that may not read the website on our new member, and I'd like to personally welcome her myself to Pavan Pamar. And if you have a moment, could you just give us a little background as to the who, what, where, why, and when? And I think the public would greatly appreciate hearing more about you.
Sure, Pav, is that okay with you?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that opportunity, Chair, and Don for bringing that up. My name is Pavan Parmar. I'm a town and regional councillor. I was elected in 2018. I serve Ward 7 in Oakville, which is everything north of Dundas, essentially. It's one of the fastest growing and diverse communities in the Halton region. I have lived in Oakville my entire life. I have 2 small kids that I'm raising here in Oakville. I'm very interested in public safety and the growing diversity in our community and representing youth, especially in many of the issues that they are facing as they reside and go in Halton. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. This has been such an exceptional first meeting. As I went through all the material, it's certainly very interesting, and I enjoyed reading through the reports, and I look forward to learning from each and every one of you. I may have some general questions along the way as I kind of get my bearings, and I look forward to reaching out to all of you and to the members of the public who may be watching today. Please feel free to reach out to me anytime if I can help out in any way, and the same goes for our stakeholders and Halton police officers as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pav. Anything further to new business? Not seeing, oh, I'm sorry, Chief, go ahead.
Well, I was only going to say, I know Councillor Parmar will not lose my contact information, which she has been quite well versed in using over the past couple of years, and so your interest in the board is greatly appreciated. On the symposium, Ms. Hand's question, I think it should just be said publicly. I mean, first of all, to thank Anita and the team, Sue Biggs and other people who put that together. But very briefly, 132 or 133 of our female staff were in attendance, and great feedback to the leaders of the symposium. So we look forward to hearing more about it when it's all put together, but it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. I'm not seeing any more questions I'm not seeing any more new business to come before us. So before we ask for a motion to go into closed session, I just want to, once again, as I normally do at this point, thank members of the public who have tuned in to watch your Halton Police Board in action. As always, we love to hear from you. So please keep in touch with us with your comments, your feedback through social media or directly through email. And always feel free to keep in touch with us through our website as well at haltonpoliceboard.ca. There's lots of good information there, including our agendas and links to the live stream of our board meetings, as well as minutes, etc. We truly appreciate your participation, and we welcome you to share our link and all of our information with your neighbors and colleagues and friends, and let them know that we're here, and we try to be as transparent as possible in terms of our deliberations and our decisions as it comes to the governance of the police service in Halton region. And in addition to that, I want to say to my board colleagues, to the wonderful staff and team at the Halton Police Service, to our board staff and team, I wish you all a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, wonderful break over the next little while for those of you who get breaks, and to our sworn and civilian officers who have to work during the holidays to keep us all safe and happy and able to enjoy our holidays. Extra big thank you to those of you who give up that time from your families to be on the roads, to be in our facilities, and once again to be the heroes that we count on day in and day out. So thank you to everybody. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see everybody back here ready to go in January. Be safe, wash your hands, stay distant and let's get through this this next phase as well as we did the last one. And with that, I'll look for a motion to go in closed session, please, to a meeting dealing with matters of a confidential nature. Moved by Ingrid, seconded by Pavan. Any objection to the approval of that motion? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned since we've completed our agenda, and